Zero burnout, take two.
How's it going? This is Sketchmonkey here and welcome back to a new video. And in this video I'm gonna take the legendary Pontiac FIERO and modernize it as if it was built today. Alright, so here we go. This is the Pontiac FIERO, of course, and to me it looks a lot. The first time I see these cars, I thought that they looked a lot like the Toyota MR2 from the same era, although the FIERO sold almost double what the MR2 did during that time. I think the MR2 sold around 160,000 cars, and the FIERO went up to way over 300,000 units during its 5-year production. So what we're going to do here is to modernize this car, and that means we're not going to completely redesign the car. We're going to update the graphics and the body of the car to make it look like a modern car that could be produced today. So some obvious things to do when we do that is to remove these plastic parts. So these very 80s and update the wheels. And one thing I noticed with this FIERO, I was about to say MR2, is these huge open wheel arches there. And it kind of makes sense because if you have a human right next to this car, you will see how small it is. So the wheels are going to look pretty big on this. I would say these are probably 15 or 16 inch wheels at tops, and we're gonna have some cool BBS wheels on here. For this wing here, for example, I want to integrate this into the body of the car. So I want to have it reach down to this point right here, remove these pillars here, and instead just have the single connection point being the end of the wing. And since it's a mid-engine car, I want to have some air intakes on the side of the car. So I want to have a big air intake right here that kind of cuts into the body of the car. So we have it goes like this, and then we have a chamfer down here, and then we can have a shoulder line that goes here, and we can have the opposite chamfer or edge right here somewhere that faces downwards, so we have a bit of an indent in the side of the car that way. I think it's gonna look pretty cool. And also, of course, the rear lights. I like these the grid system that they have in these lights here. It looks kind of cool actually, but I'm not sure if we're gonna keep that. We're gonna have to experiment with that and see how it's going to turn out. It might work, might not work. Anyway, I'm going to record everything, so even if it doesn't work, you will see at what point I decide to either go with it or not go with it. And of course, the rear bumper, we're gonna have a cool diffuser in here and probably change the exhaust from quad exhaust to some dual tip exhaust, something like this. And that's about it. So let's jump in now. Let's get to work and let's see how this is going to turn out.
Pontiac FIERO GT. Want to see something really exciting?
The FIERO was a pretty special car for GM. It was conceived as a small two-seat sports car with all-new suspension and V6 engine. And while GM did not want to invest in creating a second two-seater sports car that might compete with the Corvette, they figured that during the oil crisis of this time, it would be an opportunity to launch a fuel-efficient, sporty commuter car. To this end, the FIERO was redesigned to use a more fuel-efficient version of GM's 2.5-liter four-cylinder Iron Duke engine with 98 horsepower and capable of 31 miles per gallon in the city and 50 on the highway with the economy ratio transmission option. And these were impressive numbers for the 2.5-liter engine of the period, and still these numbers are pretty impressive today if you think about it. 50 miles per gallon highway, pretty good deal. But the 3-speed automatic reduced highway mileage to only 32. Still not too bad, but not as good as 50. And with these MPG numbers, the FIERO was intended to appeal to an audience for which the Corvette's thirsty V8 engine was not an option.
One of the 10 best cars of 1984, says Car and Driver magazine.
The FIERO design had a lot of cool new features such as composite panels. Other radical features of the time included hidden headlamps and initially integrated stereo speakers within the driver and passenger headrests. This is something we only now are starting to see in luxury cars, so that's kind of cool that they had it on the FIERO back in 1984. A mid-engine layout layout was originally chosen as a way to reduce both aerodynamic drag and vehicle weight to improve fuel efficiency, and also of course for its handling, traction and brake benefits. However, the sporty aspect that you'd expect by just looking at the mid-engine layout of the Fiero was not realized when the car was first introduced. As a typical cost-saving measure of GM, the tires, brakes and suspension were carried over from existing GM economy cars like the X and T platforms, and as a result, as you would expect, you didn't really get that mid-engine excitement and handling and cornering abilities that you would expect from just looking at the Fiero and the design of it. Instead, the driving experience was nothing special at all and pretty much the same as any regular two-door sports car of the time. Additionally, the inline-4 motor, which was designed for optimal running at low RPMs, was unsuited to drivers who purchased the Fiero expecting a quick, high-revving engine, because that's what you'd expect when you bought a two-door mid-engine sports car. It all makes sense. As drivers attempted to frequently run the engine at greater RPM than it was designed for, the engines weren't the most reliable and breakdowns were pretty common. So the Fiero received a lot of criticism for its lack of performance in relation to the cool design, and many compared the Fiero to the Ferrari 308 when they first saw it. That's kinda hard for me to see the similarities there, except for the fact that they are both mid-engined. But even with all this negative media attention and reliability issues, the Fiero sold extremely well, and Pontiac had 3 shifts working around the clock to manufacture these cars as quickly as possible. And even with this workforce, they could not keep up with demand. So to me, the Fiero is a great example of a win for the design team. It's not the best engineered car, it didn't drive that well, but the looks were just awesome, and when people saw it for the first time, they knew they wanted the car before they even take it out for a test drive. And in that sense, it's a very Italian car, I would say. Eye-catching design, but maybe not the most reliable car. And by 1985, the oil crisis was long past and demand developed for the Fiero to have a more powerful engine and better sports car performance. Pontiac responded to this by introducing the GT model, which included upgraded suspension, wider tires, and a V6 engine, putting out a total of 140 horsepower compared to the previous 97. Finally, in 1988, numerous changes were made to the Fiero to bring it in line with what the original intent for the design was. Basically, they wanted a light mid-engine Fiero to handle like a light mid-engine car. The most significant upgrade at this time was the redesigned suspension to realize the potential of the mid-engine layout. The unique suspension included new 2-piece brake calipers and upgraded brake rotors. And these new parts had all been part of Fiero's initial design, but cost cutting kept them from being implemented sooner than 1988. The available inline-4 and the V6 engines benefited from improvements over the years, and there was even a plan to make a turbocharged version of the car. Unfortunately, this did not happen before production ended in 1988, and in spite of the car being a much better sports car and finally realized its potential in its 3rd and 4th year of production, GM ended production after the 1988 model year due to declining sales. There were also many reported incidents where the engine would catch fire for no apparent reason. I guess the fire of the Fiero was a little bit too much to handle. So talking about the design here of this Fiero, I think it's coming together nicely, and I really like how this air intake kind of makes it look like it has some sort of exoskeleton or some sort of protective structure around the greenhouse. I think that turned out really cool. And also the integrated wing, it now looks a lot more modern when you have it integrated like that in the body of the car. Now, as I said, I didn't know if I wanted to go with this grid system of the taillights. It would probably work in some way to integrate the grids that we have on the original car, But in this case, I just couldn't get it to work, so I decided to go with a light bar and also have it dip down to follow the outline of the rear end of the car. And for the wheels, I mean, you can't go wrong with BBS wheels like these. They just look good, and I feel like they suit the car. Even though they look huge on this car, since the car is so tiny, it still fits the car and it looks good. And also have them be in the same material or color as the tailpipes on each side of the car. And of course we need to add some sort of diffuser in there and have some aerodynamics going on underneath the car, because it is a Fiero. It's a fiery little car, fast car, so it needs some aero to keep the rear end planted to the ground. So you have the wing on top, and then you have the diffuser at the bottom working together. And that's about it for this redesign. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I enjoyed making it. Feel free to browse around the channel and check out all the hundreds of redesigns we made so far on the channel. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, and if you are new and if you like these kind of videos and cars in general, you might want to subscribe to the channel. Thanks again, I'm the Sketch Monkey, and I will see you in the next video.